I still remember that Tuesday morning, the smell of fresh coffee drifting from the kitchen, the soft sound of Meredith humming while she prepared breakfast. I kissed her goodbye like I had done for 6 years, completely unaware that this ordinary moment would be the last one I ever trusted. She had a student coming that afternoon, a 15-year-old boy named Tyler, who seemed to need her attention more than any other kid. I thought she was being generous. I thought she was kind. I had no idea what was really happening inside our home. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If you have ever trusted someone completely only to discover they were hiding something unforgivable, this story will hit close to home. Please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Now let me tell you how my entire world collapsed in a single night. My name is Jace, and 6 years ago I married the woman I believed was my soulmate. I met Meredith at a charity concert in downtown Austin. She was on stage playing piano with such grace and emotion that I could not take my eyes off her. After the performance, I introduced myself, stumbling over my words like a nervous teenager. She laughed softly and gave me her number. That moment felt like the beginning of something beautiful. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. Everything about her seemed perfect. She was gentle, patient, and had this warmth that made everyone around her feel comfortable. When we got married, I thought I had won the lottery. We bought a house in a quiet suburb outside Austin, a cozy place with a spare room that Meredith converted into a piano studio. She wanted to teach children from home, and I supported her completely. I worked as a software engineer, mostly remote, so I was often home when her students came and went. Our life settled into a comfortable rhythm. I would hear piano melodies floating through the house while I worked in my office upstairs. Meredith had about a dozen students, ranging from young kids to teenagers. She was patient with all of them, but she had a special way of connecting with the ones who struggled. Parents loved her. They said she had a gift for bringing out the best in their children. I was proud of my wife. We talked about having kids of our own, but Meredith always said she was not ready yet. She wanted to focus on her teaching, on building her reputation. I respected that. I told her we had time. Looking back now, I wonder if there were other reasons she wanted to delay parenthood, reasons I was too blind to see. About 8 months before everything fell apart, Meredith told me about a new student. His name was Tyler, a 15-year-old from a family that was struggling financially. She explained that his parents could barely afford lessons, so she offered to teach him for free. She said he had exceptional talent and deserved a chance. I remember feeling proud of her generosity. My wife always thinking of others. Tyler started coming to our house 3 times a week. Then it became 4 times. Then 5. Meredith explained that he was progressing quickly and needed extra practice time. She said his home situation was difficult, that his father drank too much and his mother worked multiple jobs. Our house was a safe space for him, she told me. A place where he could focus on his music. I met Tyler a few times during those early months. He was thin with dark hair that fell over his eyes. He rarely spoke, and when he did, his voice was barely above a whisper. He never looked me in the eye. I assumed he was just shy, maybe intimidated by adults because of his troubled home life. I felt sorry for him. I had no reason to think anything else. Meredith started buying things for Tyler. First, it was sheet music, the expensive kind from specialty stores. Then a pair of quality headphones so he could practice at home. Then a winter jacket, because she noticed his old one had holes in it. I asked her about it once, and she waved her hand dismissively. His parents cannot afford these things, she said. It is the least I can do. I nodded and let it go. What kind of husband questions his wife for being kind to a struggling kid? But small things started to bother me. Nothing I could put my finger on, just tiny moments that felt slightly off. Meredith began texting late at night, smiling at her phone screen in a way that seemed secretive. When I asked who she was talking to, she said it was Tyler's mother updating her on his progress. I believed her. Why would I not? One afternoon, I came home earlier than expected. A meeting had been canceled, so I decided to surprise Meredith with flowers. I walked into the house quietly, not wanting to interrupt if she was in the middle of a lesson. The piano room door was open just a crack, and I peeked inside. Meredith and Tyler were sitting at the piano bench together, but they were sitting close, too close. Her shoulder was pressed against his, and her hand rested on his knee. When she saw me in the doorway, she jumped up quickly, her face flushing red. She said she was just correcting his posture, showing him the proper way to position himself at the keys. Tyler kept his head down, staring at the floor. He would not look at me. I told myself it was nothing. Teachers have to touch their students sometimes, right? To fix their form, their posture. I pushed the uncomfortable feeling aside and went upstairs to put the flowers in water. But something lingered in the back of my mind, a whisper I refused to hear. A few weeks later, Meredith organized a small recital for her students. Parents were invited to watch their children perform. I met Tyler's parents for the first time that evening. His father, Garrett, was a large man with a ruddy face and bloodshot eyes. He shook my hand too hard and spoke too loud. His breath smelled faintly of alcohol, even though it was barely 6 in the evening. Tyler's mother, Denise, stood slightly behind her husband. She was thin and tired, looking with dark circles under her eyes. She barely said a word all night. Garrett could not stop praising Meredith. He called her an angel, a saint, the best thing that ever happened to their son. He clapped me on the back and told me I was a lucky man to have such a generous wife. Denise nodded along, but her eyes seemed distant, almost hollow. At the time, I thought she was just exhausted from working too much. Tyler played beautifully that night. A complicated piece by Chopin that drew applause from everyone in the room. While he played, I watched Meredith watch him. Her eyes never left his face. There was something in her expression that I did not recognize, something that made my stomach tighten. But I pushed it away again, telling myself I was imagining things. After the recital, Garrett shook my hand again and repeated how lucky I was. "Keep her close," he said. "She is one of a kind." I smiled and thanked him. I had no idea those words would haunt me for years to come. The night everything changed started like any other. Meredith and I had dinner together, watched some television, and then she went to take a shower before bed. She left her phone on the nightstand, something she rarely did. Usually it was glued to her hand. I was not planning to look. I had never been the suspicious type, never felt the need to check my wife's messages. But her phone lit up with a notification, and my eyes automatically glanced at the screen. The message was from someone saved simply as T, and it ended with a heart emoji. My chest tightened. I told myself it was probably nothing, maybe a female friend, whose name started with T. But my hands moved on their own, picking up the phone and opening the message thread. What I found made me physically sick. Hundreds of messages between Meredith and Tyler. Messages filled with words that no adult should ever say to a child. She called him her baby, her special one. She wrote about how much she missed him between lessons, how she counted the hours until she could see him again. Tyler responded in kind, writing things that sounded rehearsed, like someone had coached him on what to say. There were photos, too. Not explicit ones, but pictures of them together holding hands, their faces close. Selfies that looked like something a teenage couple would take. My wife and a 15-year-old boy. I felt the room spin. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped the phone. I could hear the shower running in the bathroom, hear Meredith humming that same tune she always hummed. She had no idea that her secret had just been exposed. I did something I am not proud of. I took my own phone and photographed every message, every image, every piece of evidence I could find. Then I put her phone back, exactly where she had left it, and pretended to be asleep when she came out of the bathroom. I did not sleep that night, not for a single minute. I lay there in the dark next to the woman I had loved for 8 years, feeling like I was lying beside a stranger. A monster, wearing my wife's face. The next morning, I called in sick to work and waited for Meredith to leave for her yoga class. Then I went to the computer we shared in the living room and started searching through her email. What I found was even worse than the text messages. There were financial records, bank transfers from our joint account to Garrett Tyler's father. Over the past 8 months, Meredith had sent them more than $15,000. The emails explained everything. Garrett would write asking for money, sometimes politely, sometimes demanding. Meredith always agreed, and in return Tyler would keep coming to our house. One email from Denise made my blood run cold. She wrote, "We will keep quiet as long as the money arrives on time. Do not worry about us saying anything." They knew. Tyler's own parents knew what was happening to their son, and they were taking money to stay silent. They were selling their child. I walked outside to our backyard and sat in the grass until the sun came up. I cried. I had not cried since my father's funeral 10 years earlier, but that morning I wept like a child. For Tyler, for the marriage I thought I had, for the future that had just been ripped away from me. When I finally pulled myself together, I called my best friend Marcus. We had known each other since college, and he was now a criminal defense attorney. I told him everything, my voice breaking multiple times. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Jace," he finally said, "this is serious. This is a felony. You need to go to the police." I knew he was right, but part of me wanted to pretend I had not seen anything. Part of me wanted to confront Meredith privately, give her a chance to explain. But what explanation could possibly exist? What words could justify what she had done to that boy? I drove to the police station that afternoon and asked to speak with someone about a sensitive matter. They connected me with a detective named Sandra Brooks, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I showed her everything, the photos of the messages, the financial records, all of it. Detective Brooks listened without interrupting. When I finished, she looked at me with something like sympathy. "Mr. Jace," she said, "you did the right thing coming here. This must be incredibly difficult for you, but I need you to do something even harder. I need you to go home and act normal. We need time to build a case." Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. Every morning I woke up next to Meredith and pretended everything was fine. Every evening I ate dinner with her and made small talk about our days. Every night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, counting down the hours until it would all be over. The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning, exactly 2 weeks after I first went to the police. I left for work as usual, but instead of going to the office, I parked down the street and waited. 2 police cars arrived at our house just after 9. I watched from a distance as officers went to the door. Detective Brooks called me 20 minutes later. "It is done," she said. I drove home to find yellow tape across our front yard. Neighbors stood in clusters, whispering and pointing. Inside the house was in disarray from the search, and Meredith was gone. I learned later that she had screamed and cried when they put her in handcuffs. She told the officers it was a misunderstanding, that I had betrayed her, that I was the one who should be arrested for invading her privacy. Even in that moment, she saw herself as the victim. 1 week after Meredith's arrest, Garrett and Denise showed up at my door, unannounced. I almost did not recognize them. Garrett looked like he had aged 10 years overnight. His face was pale and unshaven, his eyes red and desperate. Denise stood behind him, clutching her purse like a lifeline. They had been questioned by police. They were facing charges of their own: aiding and abetting the abuse of a minor, conspiracy, child endangerment. They were looking at serious prison time. "Please," Garrett said, his voice cracking. "You have to help us." I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. Denise started crying. "We did not know," she sobbed. "We thought your wife was just being generous. We had no idea what she was doing to Tyler." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "You did not know?" I asked. "Then why were you receiving $15,000 from her over the past 8 months? Garrett opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. We thought it was charity. She said she wanted to help us because we were struggling. We never asked questions. I pulled out my phone and found the email from Denise. The one where she promised to keep quiet as long as the money kept coming. I read it aloud, watching their faces change. Denise collapsed against the doorframe. Garrett looked like he might be sick. "We need you to testify for us," Garrett finally said. "Tell them we were just parents trying to survive. Tell them we did not understand what was really happening." I was silent for a long moment. I thought about Tyler, that quiet boy, who could never meet my eyes. I thought about how confused and ashamed he must have been, how trapped he must have felt. "Do you know why Tyler never looked at me?" I finally said. "I thought it was because he was shy, but that was not it. Was it? He was ashamed. Ashamed of what was happening to him. Ashamed that his own parents knew and did nothing. Ashamed that you chose money over your own son." Denise wept harder. Garrett's face turned red. "You sold your child," I continued. $15,000. That is the price you put on your own son's safety, on his innocence. "We had debts," Garrett sputtered. "You do not understand what it is like. We had no choice. There is always a choice," I said. "You chose money." Garrett's expression shifted from desperation to anger. "If you do not help us," he growled, "we will lose everything. Tyler will have no parents." "Tyler already has no parents," I replied. "He never did. I told them I would testify, but I would testify to the truth, not the lies they wanted me to tell." Garrett cursed at me. He called me names I will not repeat. He threatened to make my life miserable. I stood my ground until they finally left Denise, still sobbing, Garrett, still shouting over his shoulder. The trial happened 4 months later. I sat in the witness stand and told the court everything. The messages, the money, the emails. I showed them the evidence that proved Garrett and Denise had known exactly what was happening and had profited from their own son's abuse. Meredith was convicted of sexual abuse of a minor and sentenced to 12 years in state prison. Garrett and Denise were each convicted of conspiracy and child endangerment. They received 5 years each. When the judge announced the sentences, I felt no joy, no satisfaction, only a heavy sadness and a small sense of relief that justice had been served. Tyler was placed with his aunt, his mother's sister, who had been estranged from the family for years. Detective Brooks told me the aunt was a good woman who had cut ties with Garrett and Denise long ago because she saw who they really were. A few weeks after the trial, I received a letter. It was from Tyler's aunt thanking me for having the courage to come forward. She said Tyler wanted to meet me to thank me in person. We met at a small coffee shop on the outskirts of town. Tyler looked different. He was still thin, still had that dark hair falling over his eyes, but something had changed. When he walked up to my table, he looked directly at me. No more staring at the floor. We talked for almost an hour. He thanked me, his voice steady and clear. He said I was the first adult who had ever believed him, who had ever put his safety above convenience. I told him that none of this was his fault, not one single part of it. Before we said goodbye, Tyler told me something I will never forget. He said, "I am not going to let this define me. I am going to survive this and become someone good." I believed him. After the trial, I could not stay in Austin anymore. Every street corner, every coffee shop, every grocery store held memories of a life that had been built on lies. I sold the house and moved to Denver, a city where no one knew my name or my story. The first few months were brutal. I barely slept. When I did sleep, I had nightmares. I saw Meredith's face everywhere I went. I second-guessed every interaction, every friendship, wondering if I could ever trust anyone again. I started seeing a therapist, a quiet man named Dr. Patterson, who specialized in trauma. He helped me understand that none of this was my fault, that predators are skilled at deception, that even the smartest, most cautious people can be fooled. Healing, he told me, is not about forgetting. It is about learning to carry the weight without letting it crush you. Slowly, I rebuilt. I reconnected with old friends, including Marcus, who drove out to visit me every few months. I started volunteering with an organization that supports victims of abuse. Turning my pain into purpose gave me something I desperately needed, a reason to keep moving forward. It took me a long time to learn how to trust again, but I did eventually. Not blindly, not completely, but enough to let people in. Looking back, I used to believe that loving someone meant trusting them without question. Now I understand that trust must be earned and verified, not given away freely. That does not make me cynical. It makes me wise. I do not hate Meredith anymore. Hatred is a chain that binds you to the person who hurt you. I refuse to be bound to her for the rest of my life. But I also do not forgive her. Forgiveness is not something I owe anyone, and some actions are simply beyond redemption. What I have found instead is peace, a quiet acceptance that the past cannot be changed, only survived. I think often about Garrett and Denise, about what it means to be a parent. Money was tight for them. I understand that. Life was hard. But nothing, absolutely nothing, justifies what they did. A parent's first duty is to protect their child. They failed that duty in the most unforgivable way possible. If you are watching this, and you have ever witnessed something wrong, something that made your stomach turn, I want you to hear this. Do not stay silent. Silence is not neutrality. Silence is siding with the person causing harm. Speaking up might cost you something. It might cost you a relationship, a job, your peace of mind. But your conscience is worth more than any of those things. Sometimes doing the right thing means losing what you love most. I lost my wife, my home, the future I had imagined for myself. But I gained something more valuable. I gained the knowledge that when it mattered most, I chose to protect an innocent child over my own comfort. If I had to do it all over again, I would make the same choice. Every single time. Because at the end of the day, the only thing I have to live with is myself. And I want to be able to look in the mirror without shame. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to make a choice between protecting someone you loved and doing what was right? How did you handle it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who is facing the same impossible decision. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Every like, every share, every subscription helps this message reach more people who might be struggling in silence. Thank you for watching until the end. Thank you for being part of this community. I wish you strength, clarity, and the courage to always choose what is right, even when it is hard. Take care of yourselves, and take care of each other.